I'm Mike Peel, one of your co-hosts of the Full Crew, and today we've got a very special co-host subbing in for Dawn, Bronwyn Morgan, one of
Hello.
my friends from the drone industry. So, Bronwyn, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Oh, thanks, Mike. And I mean, these are some big shoes to fill if I'm stepping in for Dawn. But I'm Bronwyn. I am the CEO and founder of Xeo Air. Xeo is drone services, data analytics, artificial intelligence, and autonomous systems. And we're based in Atlanta and St. Louis. I'm a Part 107 and FA Drone Pro, FA Safety Rep. I can go on and on. But I'm so excited to be here today.
Well, I'm totally happy to have you as always, and you've been guest a couple times on Dawn of Drones, I think. So the audience should be familiar with you, at least the super fans are. Um, so we're going to be talking about some great articles today. The history of humanoid robots is up first. Then we're going to dive into California passing their right to repair. Then for our drone people, second half is all about you. We're going to be talking about drones for physical security. And we're going to end the show with a really cool story about AI pilots beating human pilots. So we've got some great guests to talk about those topics today. And I'm going to start with Akshata. Akshata, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, hi there. So my name is Akshata, and a little bit about my background is I'm a mechanical engineer and a dedicated advocate of drone technology. I currently work as an independent contractor for research, marketing, and writing services. In the past, I've worked with Hackster, Dronecode, and currently I'm working with Women Who Drone and as a production manager for P3 Tech Consulting. I'm absolutely delighted to be a part of this conversation and to talk about drones and AI.
You really are everywhere. So people should check you out. And then we also have Kim Players. So Kim, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm super excited. So, my company is called Master Your Drone. I'm the founder and CEO. We're an award-winning company. We've won as a startup awards through Penn State, attracted angel investors, and everything that I ever thought of and dreamed of has just completely exploded my dream. I could have never imagined where I am if I thought about this 10 years ago. My background, believe it or not, is training professional bodybuilders. I had a background in my 20s of training professional bodybuilders, getting ready for Mr. America and Miss America shows. And then I went from that to training couples, like kind of Hollywood couples, high-end couples. And then I got into my clients would always tell me, Kim, you're so great at training and inspirational speaking. So I went in my 40s because I got tired of like not being able to eat what I wanted to eat. So I got into inspirational speaking and did a lot of speaking. And then like when I was 50, I'm like, what do I want to do? Like in my 50s to my 60s, approaching my 60s. And I prayed about doing something maybe in technology and outside. I want to be outside. And I was at a speaking event, and one of my colleagues had a drone. And I'm like, what is that? He told me a story, and the light bulb, like Despicable Me, went on. I'm like, a light bulb. And I'm sure each and every one of you have experienced that. And the rest is history. I started a drone training company. So we have a drone training academy where we teach people how to fly drones, master their remote safety. And then also we have a wonderful 5-star online in-class Part 107 class, and we attract people from all over the country, and we work with companies from like enterprise drones to hobbyists or people that are coming in for cinematography or to start their own drone company.
Yeah, so thank you for joining us. Very excited to be talking about the articles that we have today. And like you, Kim, I also kind of fell into the industry. I was doing marketing for tech shows, and one of our shows happened to be drones, and the rest is history. I kind of became chair of Interdrone, and here I am now. So it's amazing how people come into drones. They're just so captivating. They kind of steal people from the best industries out there. Our first
Yes.
article is going to be Bronwyn's, and we're going to be talking
Yeah,
about humanoid robots. So uh,
absolutely.
tell us a
Well,
little bit about this.
I live, eat, and breathe drones all day, but there's so many ancillary elements that are a part of this industry. As we're working on artificial intelligence, as a company, but also industry wide. And we were just having that conversation. And these are drones are basically flying robots. But I think what's interesting in this dynamic around the humanoid robot. Is one that I think that creates a lot of mixed feelings. People have seen movies like iRobot, and what was the one, the TV show with Watch Out Will Robinson? Um,
Lost in
uh,
Space.
yes, thank you, Lost in Space. I always really loved that show. And, I think on the serious side of this is about to be a huge business, but we've been doing this for a long time as a people, if you will, dating back to ancient Greece and China. And then I think we started to get a lot more serious with the mechanical aspects of this in the 70s. And you had really smart people in labs in Japan. And then that has now, moved over to the States. And you've got people like um, Musk with his new Optimus, which is, I think, really interesting as an offshoot of Tesla. And he believes that this is going to become this whole entire robot category will be bigger than Tesla sales, so car sales. And when you think about it, it's a bit daunting. I think science fiction has, scared all of us in a lot of ways. But when you think about an aging global population, I can see where this is extremely helpful to be a companion, to also help and assist for emergencies, but just everyday activities. And I think this could be of great value. I think, however, we really have to consider what this means in terms of artificial intelligence and replacing humans. Ideally, these robots will be used also in an industrial environment to do things that are backbreaking and that are challenging for humans to do, repetitive task and warehouse task, um, other things that are that doesn't really add a lot of value to human creativity. And so I think if they work, side by side with us and do some of those tasks that, we don't want to do, it will free us up to do more creative things. And I think that's a part of this whole future strategy that we need to be thinking about in the future of work. So I would love to hear what you guys think about this topic, because it's one that's like near and dear to me. I mean, I remember when Honda came out with their Asimo, that I was like, what? And I will tell you a little secret. When the movie I, Robot was being advertised and they were doing the teasers, I thought it was real. And I remember getting up one morning and I had seen it, because they didn't mention anything about it being a movie. And I'm going online looking for this thing. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to get one of these
Yeah.
iRobot robots. This is not the one for the, on the floor, the Zumba, but I wanted to have one. And I was like, this is like 20 grand or whatever. I was like, I'm going to put a down payment on this thing and I'm going to get one. And after hours and hours of going through this, trying to find the details, I realized it was a movie. And so great marketing by the studio. But yeah, I really thought it was real.
Yeah, those
And I really
graphics were
wanted
great for
one.
the time.
They were great. I mean, and the premise in the movie and the whole idea of three laws safe. I'm a big Isaac Asimov fan. And while most of that's theoretical, that has to be programmed. I mean, if you look at what Boston Dynamics is doing, everything from the Spot to the as the article talks about, the robot that can do parkour, and it's jumping and it's running, and so that part it does I think create a fear factor.
Yeah, the three laws are interesting, especially for the humans that program the robots, because maybe it's not laws or cognition for the robot side, but as you're making rule sets or developing systems, these are concerns that humans should have, right, while making these things. Kim, what are your thoughts?
Well, just like Bronwyn talked about, like when you think about like the different movies that are out there, I mean, there's definitely that human. I think about that movie. I think it's called Megan. Did you see that one? Yeah. So I watched that on a trip out to Washington State when I was out doing a drone thing, and like it's very interesting. Like that's creepy, right? To that extent, which I kind of love some creepiness. It kind of keeps me stimulated, right? But then on the other side of the coin, you know, it takes humans to program these drones, and I just don't. And you know, just the new trends that will trendy markets that will pop up because of AI. I mean, nothing stays the same. Let's face it. So things are always moving ahead, and you know, there's nothing new under the sun. I mean, we were seeing computers, like she said, on Lost in Space and I Dream of Jeannie. You know, like that was like way back. You know,
Yeah.
so I mean, I'm all for it. You know, I mean, I see the advantages and disadvantages, but everything has that, and I say let's just not get too far ahead of ourselves and go through the process. Just don't get too far ahead and try to predict the future in a negative way, because there are a lot of positives as well. So I feel like education and like we're at the forefront, you know, keeping an eye on things and being involved is definitely our best human experience that we can have in AI.
Akshata, what are your thoughts on humanoids and what they're doing these days?
Yeah, so I mean, how Kim touched upon this extreme complexity and the massive engineering challenges that these humanoid robots come with, right? And we just love watching these robots fail or fall. And like, I've seen that Boston Robotics, that robot fall and those epic fails videos so many times. Looking at the commercial sector, I think there is a combination of so many advanced engineering disciplines that come with it, and like people collaborating, scientists and technicians. If we even look at the timeline that goes behind building a humanoid robot, it is huge, right? It would go from several months to several years, and depending on the complexity of the projects, but and also the resources that these technicians of engineers has, right? So the entire engineering disciplines that come with it is as complex as it sounds. And yeah, thanks, Bronwyn, for talking about it. It was very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I think we have to consider, and I think Kim touched on it about getting ahead of ourselves. What we also don't understand, to your point, Akshata, is the timeline. We see a lot of glossy stuff and it's coming tomorrow, and it's really not coming tomorrow. There's a lot of safety issues. And also, as we think about advanced robotics like this with this level of intelligence and autonomy, there's power concerns. How do we, this is going to take a lot of computing power. And as we think about quantum computers, as we think about energy sources, because you're not some of them you may plug in at night, but then others eventually, how do we recharge them? What are the fuel cells? I mean, it's something that we're facing in the drone industry. How do we fly longer? How do we stay aloft longer without big, bulky, heavy batteries? And so I think that that's something that we've got to consider. With all this very sophisticated technology. And, the idea of these humanoid robots becoming so incredibly smart that they outsmart us, that is one that, it remains to be seen. Is it highly probable? Yeah. But we'll be all gone by then, maybe. But yeah, this carries a lot of pros and cons. I think it'll be a long time before we start seeing, systems like we've seen in movies where it takes over an entire, electric grid. Again, these things are very possible. And the last thing I'll say is that, I think the movie, what was with Optimus Prime, the Transformers, is there an idea that through quantum computing and through sophisticated artificial intelligence, once we get to general AI, will they become, what we consider semi, sentient? There's a whole ethics around it and morals around how we treat them, robot rights. So this will become a very interesting journey for us all. But the genie's out of the bottle. So here we go.
So I'm going to attack this from two sides, because I actually think what you're talking about is possibly divergent, right? So you have the mechanical side of things and this compulsion we have to make robots that look like us, which and perform like us. I was looking up Your.Day's writing robot, which actually, using clockwork, was able to write entire poems in cursive in, guess what century? 18th. So that's how far back this kind of instinct to recreate ourselves or robots in our image goes. But when we're dealing about the software side of things, the systems that would be necessary to have this robot function in a way that's human, you have to give it certain levels of machine learning that imitate intelligence, or some would argue our intelligence, right? So, but some of the issues related to that you're talking about almost don't need the humanoid form. That's almost just us in kind of putting our impression onto this device, where it's not necessary for intelligence.
Agreed.
Maybe, actually, because one last thing to pose, maybe our version of intelligence and what looks like us requires a body that's interacting with the world physically, and has things like a sense of death, right? So, big questions. Any last
Very big.
thoughts, Bronwyn, before we move on to the
No,
next
I mean
article?
we can go on and on about this topic, but it will be interesting to see how people around the world in different um, different cultures, different classes think about this. The elite based on price might be buying it first. It's like, look at my robot, but what does this mean for the everyday person? When we get beyond commercial use or military use, what does this look like? So
Yeah, that
I'm
brings
looking forward to it.
another cool question, which is like when to use a humanoid robot. Like you brought up like elder care and the comfort that could come with that if you matched a human form with some basic stuff, like I can move your water glass from here to there, or fill a cup for you and talk to you about your daughter or you know your family and what they're doing, right? That type of stuff is super cool and makes sense for a humanoid form, whereas maybe a factory setting never needs these, right? Maybe
Right,
that's kind of like just kind of a useless thing we're doing, a lot of wasted
right,
engineering. Anyway,
right.
so we got to move on. We could
All
probably
right.
do a whole show on this topic.
And we
Maybe we will
can.
next year. We're going to be doing more in-depth shows on the full crew.
We can.
So, all right, California's right to repair bill heads to the governor's desk. So this is Senate Bill 244, which kind of requires that your device be repairable by the user.
Right.
And each state is kind of attacking this rather differently. What makes this pretty unique, what's happening in California, was Apple's final support when they were probably one of the biggest barriers to this law going through. And then the other thing is the amount of time that the parts are required, and the ability to repair is, I think, 7 years. So for those of you who don't know why right to repair is significant, let's just let's take the example of Caterpillar, which you used to buy a Caterpillar machine and it was yours. If you needed to fix it, you could just fix it, break out the wrenches, in the tool set and get your hands dirty. With the advent of kind of computing, we installed licensing and made it impossible, and in some cases illegal, for users to repair stuff that they purchased, not rented, purchased. So I think this is actually a big leap for consumer rights, and I'm kind of happy to see it finally coming around. It seems like it was never. And also, now I'm also suspicious of Apple.
Yeah.
Why are they
Right.
signing on to this? What's the game here? Are they putting out
Mm-hmm.
competition on some level? Maybe repair shops that they didn't like, who
Right.
were doing these things without their consent. So um, let's go with Akshata first. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, as you touched upon it at the end, right? That this was an amazing perspective. Plus, the Apple's unexpected support kind of probably suggests that there's some willingness among these tech giants to align with right to repair principles. And so, the question that I'm wondering is how will manufacturers, adopt to these new requirements, and what might the implications be for the consumers in terms of costs? Would they increase? Would they, what would happen in that case?
Yeah, interesting on that point.
Mm.
Apple was able to comply with this, or at least started compliance a little while back. but they would ship you this giant repair kit that was like, and it wouldn't come on time sometimes. So they were agreeing with the principle, but not to the letter of the intent. And so that should be interesting to see how companies kind of finagle their way around this. But I do still think it's a good first step. Bronwyn, what about you?
Well, I mean, one can ponder. I think that it's not only the cost of the consumer over time, but yeah, your iPhone might go up, but then the impact to the bottom line for the OEMs, for the manufacturers. So they know they're going to be selling fewer. You know, I've got an iPhone. I don't even know what this one is, the 14, I guess. Then I'm like, I'm going to hold on to this thing for 6 years before I buy another one. But what I think might happen is they're going to come out with such amazing new and cool technology with each iteration. And you're like, man, I'm stuck with this old one. It still works, but I want that because it's going to allow me to get into my car and into my house. You can do that today. It operates my robot. It's now got this direct, feed into, the airlines or whatever. And my health, all of which can be done today. But I think that we're going to see a step change in the tech, and will allow them to have people that still want to ditch it. And then probably like we currently have today, a more of a lease strategy where you pay, month by month. But it'll be interesting to see how this comes together. But I support it. I love my old BlackBerry where I could just, take the battery out when I didn't want to be bothered, not just turn it off, but just take it out. And with the new phones, you can't do that. So I think this allows some flexibility and hopefully be a little bit more friendly to the consumer's pocket.
Yeah, there's two things that you brought up that are really interesting. It disincentivizes technological progress because you can lock your users in. And then the other kind of revealed what Apple's strategy might be, which is jack up the price and then make money on financing. So, Kim, what are your thoughts?
Well, I never heard of this. So I live outside. I live in Philly, so I never heard of this. So this is interesting. And the first word that comes to my head is YouTube. Like YouTube, if you don't have a YouTube channel, like people are going to be teaching you how to fix your phones on YouTube. That like they do, like you think of how many YouTube videos are out there about drones and I mean, anything you can look up, you can go. So I feel like the same thing is going to be happening, and it's going to get everybody once again online. It's going to be a whole new community. Once again, nothing ever stays the same. Nothing ever stays the same.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a good point. Like you think about, because this was actually a lot of the argument was like, hey, you buy a car,
right,
and you could change the battery even on a new car. If you bought it, you bought it, right? So a lot of this stuff, a lot of the arguments against this was like, why are these devices any different? Because they're smart? That's a bunch of hooey. See, I caught myself.
Okay, Mike, watch it.
It's about
we were just talking about it,
right? Like having a choice. Like you said, we have a choice to put a battery in our car, or we have a choice to take it someplace and get it to it. And I feel like the majority of people in the beginning are going to do status quo. That's what they're used to. Get their phone, move on. But eventually, that's going to open up a whole new market for YouTubers or repair, and we need more of that in our country.
Yeah, it's a more open market.
Yeah, but here's the other thing too, Kim. When you think about that, though, if you think about it, let's say you had an electric car, will you get a kit for that? Or does this really need to go to a professional? Bigger things will become a lot more challenging to repair, probably than something small like a phone or a tablet. So, this will be interesting to see as it starts to cross a broader category. Where does that stop? Am I going to be in there fixing my smart refrigerator, or do I need? And there's an AI component in there that is beyond me to fix. So this will become very interesting.
Yeah, so I think it's limited to hardware. And then also, like you said, there is hardware that there's kind of two things that needs to be tamper-proof because it's dangerous. I'm sure there's provisions for that. But the other thing is just sometimes a professional is needed to do something. But I think this all opens up the right to take it to set professional, where technically that professional didn't exist. You know, it'd be like my cousin's husband like knows a guy and like he'll do it on the back of his
Right.
Ford, but he's got a kit with all sorts of weird tools that he got from a foreign country because it's technically illegal to hack or tamper the device. So we're bringing it out of that gutter and then putting it into storefronts again, where it kind of should be. Any final thoughts on this before we take a quick break and move on to drones?
Sounds like we're
No?
good.
Okay. I guess it's not controversial. It's like, yeah, I want to
Right.
be able to repair my stuff. So next time I'll pick something that makes the blood boil a little bit more. So anyway, I just want to thank our sponsors, Rupert Law, CSG Strategies, and Aerovigilance for making this show possible. I also want to thank Bronwyn for subbing in for Dawn this week, and our two guests, Akshata and Kim. We're going to move on to the next article, which is how drones are used to optimize physical security. Actually, real quick, I just want to thank Shivandan. Oh, I'm going to get your name wrong. I'm sorry. Shivandan Khatri. So, bunch of emojis. They all look good. Saknik Saha, Godspeed. And Joel P. Lunson, great discussion. Thank you. Thank you for everybody in the comments. Feel free to ask us questions. If you have one, I'll put it in the I'll pull it up for everybody to discuss. So Kim, tell us a little bit about your articles, how drones are used to optimize physical security.
So I picked this article because I base it on like the phone calls. I talk to so many different people a day, you know, whether I'm traveling with drones or I'm, you know, doing training, and the calls that come in of people inquiring. And so like recently I got a call from a Navy SEAL, and he's in Virginia, so I'm in Philly. And so he was looking to, he does recon, I don't even really know what I'm talking about, recon security for Amazon. He just got out 20 years as a SEAL. And so he said Amazon came in and said everybody needs to get their Part 107 and learn how to fly a drone, because you're going to start using drones to fly around all our warehouses during the day. So they have nighttime provisions. So those autonomous drones then go out nighttime with thermal, which are awesome, right? Those are awesome systems. But, you know, we all see all the break-ins that are happening, all the things that are going on. It's kind of like, you know, wild how it's being permitted. So, I mean, I live in a little old town, Telford, and one of our local places was a taxiderm and gun shop was recently, you know, in the middle of the night, you know, taken over, and glasses were broken. There were several people, and the police literally, the rumor is the police literally sat there and watched it because it was too dangerous. So like we're seeing more and more of that if you watch like those quick videos on the different social media platforms. So when I think of AI and surveillance drones and security drones, I think of all the solutions, you know, like my friend Dave, who is in California, and he manages the security over 80 check cashing places. And, you know, here's a 70-year-old man, because he retired from the Redondo Beach Police Department, that is climbing up ladders, because in those check cashing places, if they can't come through the top, they'll come through the wall, they'll come through the bottom. I mean, they're like moles, right? It's like crazy. Yeah. And so, you know, to take a drone up or to have drones go around and autonomously scan things is really important. And also, like in remote areas, when I first got into drones, a search and rescue story was told of to me, and it really just, you know, as a humanitarian, just made me, you know, see the possibilities of protecting people that do high risk jobs. And we see that over and over with drones. So security drones like are important. Like when the railroads when the Mavic Pro just first came out, like the railroads bought like 500 at a time of the Mavic Pro drones. Remember how cool those were when they first came out? They were like the it drone, weren't they? And you know, because there's so many remote areas that trains go through. So so that's why I picked the remote, you know, like the AI, because it's very interesting. And of course, then on the other side of the coin, there's the I used to do a call that is called, there's a coffee connection, and then it moved over to South Africa. So they have one in South Africa. And so, like, there was a guy that came on that call, and he worked for the South African government during COVID, and he was developing a COVID drone, which the COVID drone could fly into like a concert or something and find people that were warmer than other people and kind of pick them out. And it's all ladies on this call, and it was hilarious because they're like, well, what if I'm having a hot flash? You know? So, like, it's just that kind of, and I'm thinking, oh, heck no. In my country, in the USA, we're not going to be monitoring people like that. So there's that extreme, where they can use drones to govern in a military fashion, and then there's the other side where, companies are using them for high security, for break-ins, for security, for rough terrain. So it really does, security drones are the future. I find them so interesting. I mean, look at, we have rings on our homes now. That's kind of AI security with a app, So I feel like it's coming out more and more common. So that was my choice for AI.
Yeah.
Security drones.
Yeah, lots to chew on, right? And I think you bring up a good point of basically misuse at possibly a federal or law enforcement level, but also provided an avenue for proper use for those entities, as well as definitely for private entities. This is a no-brainer for security. So, Bronwyn, what are your thoughts?
Well, this is something that I'm working on right now, and the Department of Homeland Security has issued, as a part of their threat warnings, that our infrastructure, particularly substations, are high risk. And we've already seen in Washington State, North Carolina, South Carolina, where, and I believe Oregon, where they've been attacked and it shut the grid down. And so this means now customers are without power and they've got to go now and invest and quickly and fix these assets. And so this has a lot of positive ramifications when it comes to using them in very sensitive areas, highly secure areas, also like you mentioned, rail, but places that in remote, they're hard to reach, because we need to see where the bad actors are hiding. But this is going to be a game changer. Now, there are issues, to your point, where I believe it might have been in Baltimore, where or Philly, where the police were using drones, but they hadn't really interacted with the community. And so all these drones are flying over, and they took them to court and said, this can't happen. And so the people won, and the police had to bring them down because it was just like this, like random flying. I think the same thing was happening in New York City. I believe it was over the
Yeah.
4th, and it was like,
I'll bring
yeah,
detail to that. Yeah.
yeah.
So uh, but finish your thought.
Yeah,
I'll
no,
talk
no,
about
but they can be used very positively when it comes to security. But then I think law enforcement's got to be very careful how this is approached with the community and engaging the community. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, well, back even when I was doing the Interdrone podcast during COVID, there was a couple of uses like yelling at people to get indoors with drones. That was a little bit much for me. And, I know people that develop these products. So, I told them, like, be careful who you're selling to for why, and inform them that, especially if it's law enforcement, that communication is key, because otherwise it's going to backfire on your sales.
Yeah.
If you're not communicating with the company, the community that you're responsible for protecting and serving, then you can quickly get your drone program grounded, and now you don't have this awesome tool for
Exactly.
uses that people, if they were under full knowledge of how they were being used, would be happy to allow. But when they see you misuse it, now they don't even want to give you that, right? So what happened in New York, they were, I think it was one of the ethnic parades we have here,
Hmm.
the big celebration. And Mayor Adams said, I came back from Israel and they're using these things. It's like, well, that's a very different geopolitical context than neighborhoods in New York having a party. And the auspices, I'll use that word here, that they were utilizing these for was that there was violent crimes that had been committed 2 to 3 years in the past during this community festival. So that gave them the right to, if a neighbor complained about noise, to then search with a drone. And I don't know if you've ever been to Brooklyn, but neighbors complaining about noise would authorize drones to be flown by police basically every second under every block. So
That's
that was
right.
not enough of a barrier for the public to not react, because that felt like an illegal search or warrantless search. And I'm not in disagreement with that. So we've had people on past podcasts talk about if it's no different than a camera on a stick. Well, actually, cops have rules for how they could use cameras on sticks, and they should apply to drones. So invasion of privacy is, I think, a big thing if you're going to use this technology for that stuff. Akshata, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think that the article really effectively highlights the diverse applications of drones, especially in the aspect of security, right? And particularly when Kim suggested and talked about in the context of COVID-19 pandemic, I have personally witnessed a notable surge in the drone industry during this period, right? And with an increased focus on emergency response and the effective delivery of essential supplies to the remote areas, because especially during the pandemic it was so difficult to reach to particular areas. These delivery drones, especially for medical purposes, really came through. And a really interesting aspect was using computer vision as the main source, right? Just 2 years ago, when me and a few team members of ours we were interviewing an potential prospect customer about security in warehouses. They were just, they didn't really care about the drone operations. All they cared about, any sort of AI detection for like intrusion of animals or people who are not of the warehouse area or the campus, is just really important for them. And that really highlights how important AI could bring into the aspect of security.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Bronwyn, it looks like you have something you wanted to say.
No, I completely agree. There are so many potential applications, and I think during COVID, I know we got asked about doing something, and it was like, how do we, we were trying to like force fit it to make it work. And you got to be careful. But I also recognize that we've given up so much of our privacy anyway, especially with the phones and the watches.
Mm-hmm.
If we want to be spied on, it's kind of, the train has left the station, and
You gotta let go
so
of this ankle bracelet you
yeah,
carry around,
right,
right?
exactly. And I think that while drones have more physical eyes, if you will, above, um, we've just got to be really mindful that we've already been going down this path and willingly giving our data away. So as we now bring in flying robots, cameras everywhere, how do we really feel about this? And are people going to push back? I know, Mike, you and I were talking about AI earlier, and some other applications. you know are we really that adverse to it? Because we seem to prefer the convenience of it all. So it's interesting to see, especially the dichotomy between the government's use and then also the commercial sector use.
In the first time in my life, and as somebody who's like big fan of technology, I've been given pause by some of the uses of AI and tracking, and I think I'm actually seeing what might be a consumer revolt against it, or a content producer revolt on any platform that says that they're going to train their data on what you make and post. Because what's the incentive there? I mean, that's a very cynical kind of grab. But when you think about drones and other forms of tracking, like the phone, like, do we really want to live in a world where the only free space is in your head? And I think that's the concern that you kind of see there. But on the opposite side, security is absolutely, one of the primary concerns of any private business owner, actually any private property owner, period.
Right.
And you have a right to protect yourself, especially on your property. And in the United States, by state, that could get really, really really individualized.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the discussion needs to happen. But I mean, the utility there is, I mean, you're not gonna beat having, if you have a dog walking a perimeter, a literal dog, not Spot. Like, why can't you have a drone flying your perimeter? It's basically giving you a bird.
I think that
And,
makes sense.
You know, it's, yeah, it
Yeah.
just makes sense, I think, on that
Yeah.
level when you sell it to people. I think if your property butts up against somebody else's property, they need to be notified about that and how their data is being collected.
Right.
There needs to be rules for that.
Right.
But in terms of you protecting your own property, I think this is kind of no-brainer, right? Any
Right.
last thoughts, Kim, before we move on to the AI pilot versus the human pilot section?
Yeah, like I just think I've heard a lot of great uses of it in my travels and meeting with a lot of different people all over the country. Like there are some, police departments aren't all bad, like there's some really great that really do have, like I think a Chula Vista Police Department. They're known for their drone program, right? And
Yeah, their camera flies when they're patrolling. It's not looking down.
Yeah.
It's not until they get
And
down.
then they're live streaming, like to the police officers. So not only, to me, that's that inspiration of, where it's the good and let's focus on more of what we want it to do, right? So it's that, and be a proponent for more of what we want to do, because not only is it safer for our police officers. I mean, I live outside of Philly. I train police officers, and sometimes they come in their whole lesson and they're like telling me about all the homicides. I'm like, we're here to fly drones, but they just need to, like, they're flying and telling me, and then this happened and that happened. So, all that, and their challenge of thinking that every night that they go out could be, the last night, right? Where that Chula Vista Police Department, how they can take it out and they can, live stream and let people, and crowd control. So there is the aspect of crowd control, as we saw, like in the past, few years, where a small, like Philadelphia supposedly has, protest every day. So then the drone department, the police will take up like just a Mavic Mini just to say, okay, and report. There's 15 people here. Oh, now we got 30. Now, so there's that type of crowd control too. So the more we talk about this as drone professionals that are in the space, like we're in the space, so we're hearing about it all the time, and then sharing it with others, I feel like that's the most important thing, is to, us being the leaders that people are looking for when it comes to drone surveillance, and us being the ones that ask the questions, and us the ones that are being the proponent and standing up for things that we don't like you're saying in New York, Mike, because I heard about that. I'm like, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. But thank God you're there and you're like, no, I don't want it to happen, right?
Yeah,
Because there are
me, drone
people,
person,
right,
I'm telling you, this
exactly.
is
So
bad, right?
That's my point, is like, people don't realize that there are actually professionals in every part of this country in drones that can speak up against that, or may know somebody that knows somebody, and start a platform, say like what we're doing today. So
Yeah, and in New York, we've had trouble because, I mean, look at all the freaking buildings, right? It's been tough getting the ability to fly. And the last thing I want to see is this being the public's perception
That's right.
of it, right? We want actually police officers, especially if they're in pursuit of a fleeing suspect, to be able to fly these things the same way they would be able to fly a helicopter in that
Yep.
circumstance. But if the perception is like, hey, we're just partying and you're spying on me,
Yep.
that ain't going to fly
Right.
at all. So,
Right.
yeah, anyway, so I think that ends actually on a positive note, and a great way to use drones for physical security.
Right.
We're going to move on to the fun section of the show. We're going to be talking about, the whole thing was fun, but this is even
I'm having
this
fun.
is even more
I don't know
fun.
about you guys, I'm having fun.
Yeah, fun in an interesting, conversational way. But this is just pure joy and experience. So, Akshata, tell us a little bit about what happened in Zurich with AI-powered drones.
Yeah, so to begin with, the reason why I chose this article is because it highlights a remarkable achievement in the field of artificial intelligence and robotics, where AI technology has gone beyond the boundaries of traditional games. Because we've been beat into chess and games like Go and simulations, but then as the title gives it away, this one's about how the AI has defeated human champions in a real world sport. And if you watch the video in the article, it is so cool, especially the transition where they show how the drone works in a simulation to an actual flight, and it's just all so beautiful, right? So the article basically discusses how researchers at University of Zurich developed an AI-based drone called the Swift, which basically learned about how an actual pilot would actually run around a 3D race course at these incredible speeds without crashing too often, and too often being the significant part here. And this is really important because it is the first time a robot powered by AI was defeated by a human champion in a real physical sport designed for humans and by humans. So the challenge here is that it's a FPV drone racing, which is first person view drone racing challenge, where expert drone pilots basically run through this race course, and the main part is to pass through it clearly and to avoid any crashes, right? And when the AI was learning, it was learning on simulations. The difference being here, when even the drone pilots were given certain amount of time to learn these paths, right? But when the drone in the simulation was trying to learn and go through the machine learning, it was obviously able to hard reset itself in a simulation. And that's where so during the race, the